Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to a sneak peek of our upcoming Cloud Analytics City Tour on June 1st in London and starting June 6th in New York City. You can check out more details on cloudanalyticscitytour.com. My name is Saqib Mustafa, and I'm the Director of Alliances Marketing at Snowflake Computing. Let's go around and make some introductions of our participants today, starting with Erika Bakse. Erika?
Hello, hi, I'm Erika Bakse. I'm the Head of Business Intelligence at IAC Publishing Labs, which is the operating entity of Ask.com, and a very, very happy Snowflake customer.
Mike Pickett.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Pickett. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at Talent, and we have worked closely with Snowflake to develop a high-performance connector to help our customers load data efficiently and effectively into the Snowflake platform, and we're very excited to be working with Snowflake as well.
Norris?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Norris Haddad. I'm the Director of Technology Alliances at Looker. Looker is a next-gen BI platform that fully leverages cloud databases, and so we work very, very closely with Snowflake, and I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you very much, everyone. So today we are going to talk about the struggle for data and how some of your industry peers are solving the struggle. And this is an open-ended session, so people on chat more than welcome to submit their questions. We will take up some of those questions, and we will also have some starting questions. So I'd like to start with Mike Pickett and talk to him about struggle for loading and integrating data, especially in the cloud environment. Mike, tell us a little bit about how you are seeing people solve those problems, and tell us a little bit about how you guys ensure that you can bring in data from different silos and different types of data, and a little bit about the Snowflake Connector.
Sure. Well, first, let me talk about one of the things that we see as a common misperception, and that is that when moving to a modern solution like Snowflake, that it is an initial load and then it's done and over. And that's not the situation in reality. What ends up happening is as companies adopt Snowflake and what we would call as a no-compromise database, they start understanding they can do much more and more. And they realize there's a need for ongoing integration of what we would say ground to cloud. So they're on-premise applications and data up into the cloud, as well as from various cloud applications and connecting across those two. And what is important, we believe, is to recognize that as this is a modern architecture, it's important to have modern integration technology. And having a single technology that can do what any integration pattern, the ground to cloud or the cloud to cloud, do it in any mode, whether that is in batch or whether that's in real time, so trickle feeds, or event-based. And that is what Talent provides. Now, what we did with Snowflake is we worked closely with our engineering teams, and we took advantage of a capability that Snowflake has, which is a parallel loader. And what this does allow is for very large volumes of data to be quickly and effectively moved into the Snowflake environment so that customers are able to analyze more data, they're able to do it faster and much more efficiently, and are able to make better business decisions in real time.
Great input, Mike. And Erika, I would like to extend this question to you too. How have you seen some of the challenges of loading data and integrating data to the cloud? And talk a little bit about that, because you're on the other end of the spectrum, right? You're a day-to-day practitioner. So take us a little bit through that.
Sure. So one thing we found moving from an on-premises data warehouse to the cloud is that the biggest bottleneck we really ran into was moving our data up into the cloud. Given that you really need to move to a streaming model with the cloud, because trying to move large, multi-terabyte files just doesn't work. With our on-premises data warehouse, we didn't really have a way to separate our compute like the way we did with Snowflake, so we had to process in very large batch files. But what we found with going to the cloud is, well, we had to move to streaming, but the nice thing is we could move to streaming, and we could move to a streaming process, a streaming compute process, thanks to the separation of compute with Snowflake. So now we have our data streaming directly into S3 from our front end, from our web pages. We actually process it, process every 15 minutes. So we end up with data coming in hourly now, fully cleansed, as opposed to the previous day. So it did mean an architectural paradigm shift, but the end result is actually we've got faster data, cleaner to our analysts, which is fantastic.
Thank you, Erika. And so now let's talk about the struggle to analyze data. Norris, take us a little bit through what you are seeing in terms of the struggle to analyze data, on making sense of it all, right? What is your input for customers who are seeing those sort of struggles?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say what we mostly see with our customers is one of two problems. One is what we at Looker call a data bottleneck problem, where basically you have all of the data available. It's in one environment like Snowflake, right? But getting access to data and having a kind of self-service environment is not enabled. So you typically have an analyst or a team of analysts that are tasked with producing reports that business users consume. So when you have a question as a business user, you basically ask that question, getting in some sort of queue, wait for that analysis to be conducted. You'll get an answer back. You probably have a follow-on question after that, or sometimes you maybe didn't even ask the question in the right way, so you need to ask it again. You get in the back of the queue again, wait for that answer to be that question to be answered again, and so on. And that's kind of a slow and painful process, right? It ensures that the questions you're asking are getting the right answers because they're being done by analysts who know what the data means. But it's usually too slow to be able to answer every day-to-day question that you want to be answering with data, right? The flip side of that is what we here call data chaos, is where when business users get tired of getting in line and waiting for someone else to answer the question for them, they'll maybe slice off a piece of the data and just go at it themselves. I might work in finance, and I'll take some of the finance data, roll it into a spreadsheet, and do my analysis there. That'll feel a lot better because at least I'm moving and I'm getting answers and I'm not waiting. But essentially that piece of governance or standards across the company to make sure that everyone is defining things the same way and using a central source of truth is lost in that process. And so then you run into problems where multiple people might be running the same report essentially, but getting different answers, and then spending time debugging who has the right analysis versus what are we going to do based on the results that we got? What are the actions that we're actually going to take? So the way we see it, it's really kind of a trade-off between having a set of standards or data governance, or you could call it data dictionary on the one side, and then having a self-service environment where everyone can answer their own questions and go at the pace that they need to go at without having to wait on a centralized team, which is really the only way to ensure kind of agility in answering those questions. So that's kind of the landscape that we're seeing right now.
Great, well said. And Erika, anything to add there?
I definitely agree with the 2 points you brought up. Prior to moving to Snowflake, we did not really have a centralized environment, and a lot of the work was to combine and conform the multiple data sources that we had to simplify that analysis. And then I also agree that, on top of that, you need to make sure that we have simple enough, data model. And really, that just comes down to human use. I think no data warehouse tool can really fix that. That only comes from interacting with your company and understanding the business processes and how they really use that data. Thankfully, we have a lot of very SQL fluent people, but we also have some very complicated calculations that we've had to build in and make sure are part of our process to make it as simple as possible for people to get the right answer. Yeah, I think it's a real problem, but it's one of those things that, what you want to make sure is that your technology doesn't get in the way of solving what ultimately I think is a human problem.
Okay, great. And this is actually really good because a Q&A just came up. Erika, and it very well leads into the next topic, which is, Erika, talk a little bit about, how your job changed when you moved towards the cloud, right? We've seen a lot of people struggle with on-premises workloads and stuff, and when they move to the cloud, they think that, just moving their on-premises device to the cloud just solves it. But in your case, something different happened. So I wanted to get your opinion on it.
Sure. So, we talk about how one of the struggles that we had prior to moving to the cloud is that we were a very reactive team and we were constantly having to put out fires, some of which were just due to our technology that it was going down. And so that meant that we couldn't really be proactive and start understanding what the business needed as much as we wanted to. So that was the first step, was just getting to a stable platform with just what we had. We started with a lift and shift of our data warehouse. And as I mentioned in the first question, we realized we had to change some of our architecture to really take advantage of the cloud. And just by virtue of doing that, ended up making some things better for analysts. It was a win-win in that we got faster data. The next steps we've seen has been understanding some of those self-service business needs and also different business areas that maybe weren't even aware of what we had. A good example is our data science team. They were spending a lot of time cleansing data that was in Hadoop and unstructured, not realizing that we had that available already structured and cleaned in our data warehouse. So we actually ended up shutting down our Hadoop on-premise cluster. They still have the option, thanks to AWS, to pull the data out of Snowflake and manipulate how they want. But this was an opportunity that really wasn't available until we had the cloud. So what I'm finding is not so much that all the problems are solved. It's just that now we can actually tackle new problems that, frankly, were out of our grasp before. Nobody even thought about it. In fact, when I'm doing trainings now on self-service, I've really tried to make it clear to people that, we feel free to come with us any problem. We might say no, but more often than not, we might say we think there is a way to do that now. Whereas before, I think people got into this habit of just thinking we couldn't do it. But if we don't know, we can't try. And so I love that we have a platform now where we can say yes a lot more. And so that has just been great for solving new problems and invigorating my team and spending less time being a DBA and more time actually doing engineer work.
That's great. Mike, anything to add? Because you guys are seeing a lot of this sort of issues where customers before were stuck to one problem, while now with new platforms like Snowflake and Talent together, you guys can actually bring in a lot more data sources. So anything to say about that?
Yeah, we talk a lot about data agility and just the importance for a company and executives to have access to more data that they trust faster, be able to modernize. There's a set of tools that, and the whole segment of the market of data preparation, we see that as growing very rapidly as companies are really trying to understand is how do I get a better grasp of what data I'm dealing with and how do I integrate all that information. And Talent provides a data preparation tool, and this would be used for the data engineers. These are some of the people that might be writing the integrations by hand before, as well as data scientists. And it really is, it's a much more effective tool. It's like a spreadsheet where they can try out ideas. They can look at the actual data so that they can start making decisions on how they want to do the integrations. And these are called recipes. And then once they have an understanding of how they want to integrate the data, and this is something that they would then want to pass off to their team that does the analytics, they can drive these recipes into the data integration engine, process the data at scale, and then make it available for the tools like Looker, and just accelerate the whole process and include more people into the process so that more ideas can be tested and more problems can be solved.
Great, great. Norris, while we are on the topic, you mentioned self-service a couple of times, and then I think Erika also mentioned self-service. So take us a little bit through that. We keep on hearing, and self-service seems like one of those relatively newer words which has been introduced, a hot topic which has been introduced. However, I've seen a lot of organizations struggle with that. So take us a little bit through the struggling through that, and then I would like all of you to comment on how you have enabled people to be self-served in terms of analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to. I mean, the way we fundamentally see that problem or opportunity to offer self-service analytics is and the way we solve it at Looker is by basically having a join between having a governed view into the data. So we think that self-service without some sort of governance or rails around the raw data doesn't really work, right? Just throwing terabytes or petabytes of data in hundreds or even thousands of tables at a business user that doesn't really know where to go from there doesn't really work, and it ends it gets you into problems. So Looker has a semantic modeling layer that basically allows analysts or data engineers to take all the knowledge from their heads and into software and basically program how the data interleaves, what are the joins between the different tables, define the dimensions and metrics that they want to expose to business users, and obviously give those on a permission basis so that every user only has access to what they should have access to. But then once you've enabled that environment, then every end user can actually ask their own questions, via a UI that's easy to use. So if you have, people that are savvy and can write SQL can obviously answer those questions easily anyway, but people who do not know how to write SQL will still have complicated questions that they want to ask. And this allows them to ask those complicated questions and get a trusted answer back. So having a combination of a modeling layer that kind of predefines what the data means and how it should be used, coupled with a self-service environment in the regards of a graphical UI that just lets you drag and drop dimensions, metrics, slice them, filter, pivot, and then drill down into row-level detail from an aggregation if needed. Those are all the things that business users really want to have access to and the power to do without having to know every nuance of the database architecture underneath, right? And so that's how we approach it at Looker. And one way to do that is via the UI of the BI tool itself, right? Obviously, creating reports inside of the dashboards, that works really well. But you also want to take that data to where each user lives and where they do their work, right? So you can embed reports and dashboards directly into Salesforce. For your sales team that needs to see account health metrics and things like that, directly within the account tab of Salesforce where they're working in, or directly within Slack, right? We have a Slack bot that lets you ask questions in something similar to natural language and get an answer as you're chatting to someone in real time, or just embed them into a custom portal for your customers or partners or vendors to provide them with the analytics that they need. So basically, putting the data into context of where the knowledge worker is adding value.
Okay, great. Erika, you started talking about self-service too, and I think you hinted towards it. Anything else to add on that topic?
Sure. It's funny, Saqib, that you said that self-service sounds like the new thing, but my mother's been working in BI now for 20-some years, and she says, it's one of those trends that always pops up. Everyone thinks they have a new answer to self-service. And I think that's where we sometimes confuse technology with understanding the semantic layer, because we have these tools that will allow us to build a semantic layer. And I think a lot of what business intelligence is as a practice is understanding the business and getting it to where users can do most of their things self-service. What's interesting about now with the cloud is a lot of those tools were just prohibitive for small business. You couldn't really get that kind of semantic layer and enable that sort of analysis without spending a lot of money. Now it's much easier. But what you're also going to find is that there's going to be power users who really do dig into the data and can be fully self-service, and there are users that will never get to that level or don't even want to be at that level. So I think there's always going to be some need outside of the self-service queue. But what we can do is, by understanding the business and understanding the processes and build for that, we can move most of those easy questions that can be answered by the largest percentage of people at self-service, so that the time that we have as an analytics team is spent on those more complicated questions where we really do want the kind of vetting and data governance and extra eyes to make sure we're really getting the right answer there. So I see it as a spectrum for self-service, and self-service is going to mean different things to different people. One person, it might be just, I want to be able to run this report anytime I want. Another person, it might be, I want to be able to dig down and write these complex SQL queries. But our job is to be able to enable a platform that supports the spectrum of that and provide fast, I think, as Mike said, agility in our data products.
Great. So, Mike, anything to add to that? I mean, you talked about agility, but from the self-service perspective, when you were trying to pull in data from all these different sources, how do you self-serve the end user for all of this data?
So, first is obviously, do you have connectivity to it, and can you bring it together, and can you bring it together in one place where people can access it, and whether this is in a lake or a storage thing like S3, in the database like Snowflake. It's getting it all into one area, but you have to have the connectivity to the systems, obviously, and that's something that I think in traditional BI, a lot of times people were looking at just what was connected up to the warehouse, and in more modern architectures, it's not just the warehouse, but it's a lot more of the operational systems and the such. And going back to what Erika said, and she talked about how we've been doing this, and her mom's been doing it for years. I myself have been around the computer industry for a long time, going back to the 80s to date myself. And so much of the things that people talk about are new. They're ideas that have been around for a long time. And it's the new technologies that now enable some of these things to be done at scale, to be done across the company. And I think that's what we're really seeing with these modern architectures is, companies are able to finally really do a lot of their analytics and insight at scale and in real time. And that's an exciting place to be.
Yep. So guys, we're coming up towards the end of our half an hour, and the one question I did want to ask all three of you, frankly, is let's say tomorrow if someone comes up to you and says, what I am struggling with data. I'm really struggling with data. I'm on premises. I'm really locked down. I don't have too much visibility into what my data can solve. I can't bring in easy data sources. I can't provide my analysts easy answers. What would you say to them? And let's start with Mike on this one.
I'm assuming they have some freedom to do something.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what this is a common pattern that we see, is sales and marketing organizations are trying to get better insight, cross-sell, upsell. It's the revenue portion of the business. And they want to try some ideas, but the fear is more of the ideas they're going to try are going to be proven, are just going to be proven or disproven. They're looking for the one or two that are going to make a big difference, and it simply doesn't make sense to go to IT and ask for, for some of these ideas that might require lots of data, and IT is going to come back and say, is legacy, Oracle or Teradata or IBM infrastructure, you're going to need to budget X millions of dollars. Start in the cloud. Use the capabilities in something like Snowflake and Looker. Try modern tools. Test and try your ideas, and be willing to fail, but fail fast. And those are very common conversations for us. And what we provide is, again, the ability to quickly link up, get the data, try the ideas, and if it's successful, that breeds success. And if it's not successful, the harm is very little in terms of the financial impact. And so what we are seeing is a lot of rapid projects being tested and tried out of the sales and marketing organization with just freedom to be willing to try and be wrong, because it really is not a disastrous situation anymore.
Great. Norris?
Yeah, I would actually echo a lot of what Mike has said. I mean, the cloud really, what it fundamentally affords you is flexibility. So, the CapEx costs become OpEx costs of just monthly, and then sometimes, in a POC environment, even free trials, right? So the cost to experiment has gone down so dramatically. You can spin up a POC for a new workload and test out a new architecture and see it in a very limited scope with limited risk of what it's like to work with these new technologies, right? From I would say from an architecture point of view, I would say centralize all of your data. It's really a lot easier to do today than it used to be. Definitely a lot more cost effective, right? You can with storage costs in S3 and Snowflake. I mean, you can store terabytes and even petabytes of data at really small, reasonable budgets. And then, technology like Snowflake will allow you to basically scale up your jobs as you progress and as you move more workloads into those environments. The costs will just go up proportionally. You don't have to invest a lot of resources ahead of time before you've proven out the value. And it's similarly, using a tool like Talend that's first open source, right, obviously, and then as you see the value in production, can get easily hosted or self-hosted options, and on the Looker side, what we've seen is we'll do a free trial for every customer and show them the value before they have to commit to anything. So on the whole, you can get a best in breed data stack in really not a lot of time and with minimal financial investment as well. So just go for it.
Yeah, and I'd love to have both of you hinted towards one thing, which is, hey, be ready to fail and fail fast. So that's a great assessment. Erika, let's wrap it up with you. What do you think is the impact of, if you were to talk to someone and say, hey, if they were to start out, what advice would you give them?
I mean, just exactly what these guys are saying, test it. I'm definitely one of those people that has a skeptical eye to any of these claims that people can make until I can test it myself, and particularly being able to test it against my own use case. We heard so many great things about Snowflake and its ability to handle JSON, but those were from companies that maybe had 10 columns in JSON. We had 250. And thankfully, they did bear out. Snowflake is great in JSON, but our testing maybe revealed a different architecture fits our data model better than maybe some of those companies that only had 10 columns of JSON. So Snowflake was still able to do it, but we actually had to kind of test our way into what was the right storage and data model for us. I agree, it is so much easier to get started even before we looked at Snowflake. We looked at Google BigQuery, we looked at Redshift, and we also looked at on-premises stuff. And ultimately we found we got better features, but also it was cheaper. I mean, we saved 78% of our budget, which if you're having a hard time convincing your CIO or CTO to give this a go, throwing around numbers like that suddenly perks them up in a way that, maybe the inertia of staying with a product, doesn't help them move off. And I get that. The other thing I would say is, don't feel like you have to make a choice to move to one big thing. I mean, the nice thing with the cloud right now is one of the reasons we went with Snowflake was that it was on AWS, which opened us up to the whole ecosystem of data tools that are out there. So instead of feeling like we were getting locked into a provider, if anything, we felt freer because now we can say to our users, well, now you can pull the data out and use Lambda, or you can use Docker, or you can use Hadoop, and you can use these things. We actually got more because of that ease of moving into the ecosystem than feeling like we had to choose one. So that I think is huge. You're hearing a lot more about people having cloud redundancy, and I only see that's going to get better. So just jump in. And if you're at a place that doesn't support that, I'd probably start looking for someplace else that does. It's just such an exciting time in data. There's no reason to be held back in the dark ages. It's great.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank you, the participants, for today. Erika Bakse, Mike Pickett, and Nora Sadat. Greatly appreciate your insight. These are some really good conversations. Folks on the phone and otherwise, feel free to join us for our Cloud Analytics City Tour, which is starting in London on June 1st. It's going to be an exciting time where, your peers will be talking about solving these sort of struggles, the struggle between BI and IT and the struggle for data. So come and learn from your peers who are very actively participating in these sort of environments. June 1st in London, June 6th in New York, June 7th in Boston, June 8th in Atlanta, June 13th in Chicago, June 14th in Austin, June 15th in Santa Monica, June 20th in Seattle, and ending in June 22nd in San Francisco. So with that, thank you very much, and have a nice day.